They say you can smell betrayal before you see it. I didn't believe that until the Sunday Julian decided to destroy me in front of half the neighborhood. I pulled into the driveway of my craftsman home, the one I'd paid off in full 10 years ago, the one with the rose bushes I'd planted the year Marcus died, and noticed the cars first. Too many of them. Julian's black Audi, Tiffany's white Range Rover, and at least 8 others I didn't recognize. Expensive cars, the kind that said, "I've made it," even if the people driving them were still drowning in payments. I sat in my old Subaru for a moment, the focaccia I'd baked that morning still warm on the passenger seat, wrapped in linen. The smell of rosemary and olive oil filled the car. I'd woken up at 5 to make it, the way I always did when Julian hosted anything. Old habits. Mother habits. Through the windshield I could see the backyard. String lights I didn't remember approving. A bartender in a bow tie. Julian's laugh, loud, performative, cutting through the buzz of conversation. I grabbed the focaccia and walked around to the back gate. "Eleanor!" Tiffany's voice was bright and sharp, like expensive glass about to shatter. She was standing near the drink table, her phone in one hand, a glass of rosé in the other. Athleisure, as always. Lululemon leggings that cost more than my first month's rent in 1985. "We didn't think you'd actually come." The way she said, "actually," like I was the guest, in my own house. "I brought bread," I said, holding up the focaccia. She glanced at it the way you'd glance at a spider. "Oh, how? Rustic. I'll just put that in the kitchen." She took it from my hands without waiting for a response and disappeared inside. I scanned the yard. 15, maybe 20 people. Julian's colleagues from the bakery, though he called them his team now, not ours. A few of his college friends who'd never had real jobs but always had opinions about business. And neighbors. The Chens from 2 doors down, the Robertsons across the street. People I'd known for a decade, now holding cocktails and pretending not to stare. Julian stood at the center of it all, next to the grill, wearing a polo shirt that probably cost $200. His hair was gelled back. Too much cologne, something woody and aggressive, like he was trying to smell like a corner office. He saw me, and his smile faltered, just for a second. Then he cracked his knuckles. I'd learned to recognize that sound. It meant he was about to lie or do something he'd rehearsed. "Mom!" He walked toward me, arms open, but didn't actually hug me, just clasped my shoulders like a politician greeting a voter. "Glad you could make it. We're celebrating." "Celebrating what?" I asked. "New direction for the company," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Big changes coming. Growth, expansion, modern thinking." Modern thinking, as if the 12 locations I'd built from a single kitchen were ancient history. Todd Brennan appeared at Julian's elbow holding a beer. Our CFO, 45 years old, soft in the middle, with eyes that never quite met yours. "Eleanor," he said, nodding. "Nice to see you." I didn't answer. I was watching Julian's hand, the way it rested on Todd's shoulder. Familiar. Conspiratorial. The smell of charcoal smoke mixed with something else. Citronella candles, Tiffany's perfume, cut grass, my yard, my house. But it didn't feel like mine anymore. Julian clinked a fork against his glass. The yard went quiet. "Hey, everyone." His voice had that fake, casual tone people use when they've practiced a speech in the mirror. "I just want to say thanks for coming out today. It means a lot to have you here as we celebrate this new chapter." New chapter. He kept saying that. "As most of you know," Julian continued, "Hayes Artisan Bakery has been a family business for over 25 years. My dad, Marcus, and my mom built something really special. Past tense, built, not build. But every business reaches a point where it needs fresh leadership, new energy. And frankly," he paused, looked directly at me, "it's time for the older generation to step aside and let those of us with vision take the reins." A few uncomfortable laughs. Someone coughed. Tiffany was filming on her phone. "So, Mom," Julian said, his voice dripping with something that might have been pity if you didn't know him. "I think we can all agree. You've earned your rest. You've done your part. But let's be honest." He gestured around the yard at the house. "You're just a useless parasite in this house and this company. It's long past time for you to go to a nursing home and let me take over what is rightfully mine." The words landed like stones in still water. 15 people, 20, however many there were, all of them frozen. The Chens stared at their shoes. The Robertsons exchanged a glance. One of Julian's colleagues, a kid named Sam, who I'd hired 2 years ago, looked like he wanted to disappear into the grass. Tiffany stopped filming. Even she looked uncertain. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't do any of the things Julian probably expected. I just stood there, feeling the weight of the air, the smell of the smoke, the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. And then I turned around and walked into the house. The stairs creaked under my feet, the same creak they'd made for 18 years. I walked into my bedroom, the one I'd shared with Marcus, the one I still couldn't bring myself to redecorate, and pulled my old leather suitcase from the closet. My hands were steady. I packed methodically. 2 changes of clothes, underwear, my toiletry bag, the lavender hand cream that smelled like my mother's garden. Then I went to the office. In the filing cabinet, under Legal Business, I found the original LLC operating agreement, the one Marcus and I had signed in 1998. I pulled out my stock certificates, the deed to the house, the trademark registration for our recipes, every single one filed under my name. In the bottom drawer, wrapped in tissue paper, was my grandmother's sapphire necklace, the one Marcus gave me on our 10th anniversary. I put it in the suitcase, and then I grabbed the smallest recipe journal, the black one, leather-worn soft from years of use, the one with the cinnamon roll recipe that made us famous. I could hear the party continuing outside. Laughter, music, Julian's voice, probably making another toast. I zipped the suitcase closed. The house was quiet up here. I could smell the faint scent of the focaccia I'd baked, still lingering in the hallway. I thought about all the mornings I'd spent in that kitchen. 4 a.m. starts. Flour on my hands, Marcus drinking coffee and reading the paper while I tested batches. I walked down the back staircase, the one that led to the mudroom, and out the side door. My Subaru was still in the driveway, but I didn't take it. I called a car. It arrived in 4 minutes. The driver didn't ask questions. I gave him the address of the Heathman Hotel and watched my house disappear in the rearview mirror. Julian didn't notice I was gone until 20 minutes later, when Tiffany asked where I'd put the focaccia. Before we continue the story, leave a like and comment your age and where you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story has reached. The Heathman. Hotel lobby smelled like leather and old money. Marble floors. A fireplace that probably cost more than most people's cars. The kind of place where they don't ask if you have a reservation. They just know you belong there by the way you walk in. I didn't belong there. Not in my Sunday jeans and the cardigan with the small hole near the left pocket. But I had a credit card and a suitcase, and that was enough. "Welcome to the Heathman," the desk clerk said. Young woman, maybe 25. Bright smile. Name tag, Simone. "Checking in?" "I need a room," I said. "For the week." She typed something into her computer. "We have a deluxe king available, city view. Is that acceptable?" I almost laughed. Acceptable. As if anything about today was acceptable. "That's fine." She took my credit card, the one in my name only, the one Julian didn't even know existed, and slid a key card across the marble counter. "You're in room 412. The elevator is just past the—" "I'll find it," I said. The room was too nice. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Portland. A king bed with crisp white sheets that probably had a thread count higher than my mortgage payment used to be. A bathroom with heated floors and one of those rainfall shower heads. I set my suitcase on the luggage rack and sat on the edge of the bed. My phone buzzed in my purse. I pulled it out and saw the screen light up with notifications. 12 missed calls, 17 text messages, all from Julian. The preview of the most recent one flashed across the screen. Julian. Mom, where did you go? People are asking about you. This is embarrassing. I stared at the word embarrassing, not I'm sorry, not I went too far. Embarrassing. I held down the power button until the screen went dark, and then I sat in the silence. It was the first real silence I'd had in 3 years, maybe longer, maybe. Since Marcus died, there'd always been noise, Julian's voice on the phone, asking about the business, Tiffany's voice in the background, asking when I'd be moving out, Todd's voice in meetings, agreeing with everything Julian said, the hum of the bakery ovens, the buzz of my own thoughts, trying to hold everything together. But here, in this hotel room, 4 stories above the city, there was nothing. Just the faint sound of traffic below, the hum of the air conditioning, my own breathing. I kicked off my shoes and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. That night, I ran a bath. The hotel had provided lavender bath salts in a small glass jar. I poured the entire thing into the water and watched it dissolve, the scent rising with the steam. It smelled like my mother's garden, like the mornings I used to spend picking herbs before the bakery opened. I sank into the water and closed my eyes, and that's when the memories came. 27 years ago, Marcus and I opened the first Hayes Artisan Bakery in a tiny storefront on Hawthorne Boulevard. 600 square feet. A used oven I'd bought off Craigslist. No employees, just the 2 of us, working 18-hour days. I remembered the smell of the first batch of cinnamon rolls I'd ever sold. The way the butter and cinnamon and yeast mixed together into something that made people stop on the sidewalk and follow their noses inside. We made $87 the first day. Marcus had framed that first dollar bill. It hung in his office until the day he died. Julian had taken it down 2 months later, said it was off-brand. I remembered the day Julian was born, the way Marcus had held him in the hospital, whispering promises about the future. We're building this for him, Marcus had said, so he never has to start from nothing like we did. And I remembered the moment I realized we'd made a mistake. It was 18 months ago, a Tuesday morning. Julian had walked into the flagship bakery kitchen, where I was training a new hire on our sourdough starter process, and announced that he'd signed a lease for a 13th location, without consulting me. It's a great opportunity, Mom, he'd said, cracking his knuckles. We need to move fast or we'll lose it. We don't have the cash flow for another location, I'd told him. Not until we pay off the equipment loan for the Beaverton store. He'd smiled, that new smile he'd developed, the one that didn't reach his eyes. Don't worry about it, he'd said. I took care of it. I should have pushed harder, should have asked what took care of it meant, but I didn't. Because he was my son, and I wanted to believe he knew what he was doing. The water in the tub had gone lukewarm. I added more hot water and sank deeper. 18 months. That's how long he'd been stealing from me. I knew it now, the way you know a bruise is forming before it turns purple. The next morning, I met Rebecca Stern for breakfast in the hotel restaurant. Rebecca had been my attorney for 15 years. She'd handled the trademark registrations, the LLC paperwork, Marcus's estate. She was 53, sharp as a blade, and had a reputation for making opposing counsel cry. She arrived carrying a leather briefcase and wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Eleanor, she said, sitting down across from me. Her voice was warm, but her eyes were all business. I got your message. Are you okay? No, I said. She nodded. Good. Anger is useful. Tell me what happened. I told her everything. The barbecue, Julian's speech, the word parasite, the way Tiffany had filmed it, the silence of the neighbors. Rebecca's jaw tightened. Okay, she said. Here's what we're going to do. First, I'm going to get a restraining order if he tries to access your house. Second, we're going to audit the company books. And third, She pulled a manila folder from her briefcase and slid it across the table. I'm going to show you something I found yesterday. I opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, transaction records, invoices for a company called Brennan Solutions LLC. I recognized the name immediately. Todd. He's been siphoning money through a shell company, Rebecca said quietly. Julian's signature is on every approval. Together, they've embezzled approximately $347,000 over the past 18 months. My coffee had gone cold. I didn't care. I flipped through the pages. Fake vendor invoices, payments for consulting services that never happened, transfers to offshore accounts, and at the bottom of the pile, a loan document. Julian had taken a $200,000 loan against the company's assets, without board approval, without my signature. Except my signature was there, at the bottom of the page. I stared at it. It looked like mine, almost. But the E in Eleanor was wrong. Too round. I always made mine with a sharp angle. He forged it, Rebecca said. I set the paper down carefully, as if it might explode. What do I do? I asked. Rebecca leaned forward. What do you want to do? I thought about Julian's face yesterday. The way he'd looked at me like I was something to be discarded. The way he'd said, rightfully mine. I thought about Marcus, about the dollar bill Julian had thrown away. I thought about 27 years of 4 a.m. mornings and burned hands and recipes tested 100 times until they were perfect. I want to take it all back, I said. Rebecca smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. Then let's go to war. Rebecca's law office was on the 8th floor of a glass building downtown, the kind of place where every surface reflected your own face back at you. Floor-to-ceiling windows, abstract art that probably cost more than a car. A receptionist who offered me sparkling water in a crystal glass. I sat in one of the leather chairs in Rebecca's conference room and waited. The city sprawled below, bridges and buildings, and the river cutting through it all like a scar. Somewhere out there, Julian was probably at the bakery, sitting in what he thought was his office, making plans for what he thought was his future. Rebecca walked in carrying 3 folders and a laptop. Coffee? She asked. Please. She poured 2 cups from a French press on the credenza, real coffee, the kind that smelled like it cost $20 a pound, and sat down across from me. Okay, she said, flipping open the first folder. Let's talk about what you actually own. She slid a document across the table. The original LLC operating agreement. The one Marcus and I had signed in 1998, back when we didn't know what we were doing, and paid a lawyer $500 to draft something that would keep things simple. You hold 51% of Hayes Artisan Bakery, Rebecca said, tapping the page. Julian has 25%. Todd Brennan has 4%. Outside investors hold 20%. That means you have controlling interest. Every major decision requires your approval. Julian doesn't know that, I said quietly. No, Rebecca said. He doesn't. Because he never read the agreement. He just assumed that when Marcus died, everything would automatically transfer to him. She pulled out another document, the trademark registration for our recipes. This is even better, she said. Every original recipe, cinnamon rolls, sourdough, the honey lavender scones, all of it, is registered under your name, not the company's, yours. Without your permission, Hayes Artisan Bakery can't legally produce a single item that made them successful. I stared at the paperwork. My name, Eleanor Hayes, stamped and certified and completely ironclad. He can't take any of this from me, I said. No, Rebecca said. He can't, but he tried. She opened the 3rd folder. Inside was a petition, legal letterhead, filed 2 weeks ago with the county court. Petition for guardianship and determination of incapacity. Eleanor Hayes. I read the first line and felt my stomach drop. Julian had tried to have me declared mentally incompetent. He withdrew it, Rebecca said quickly. The judge dismissed it immediately. There was no medical evidence, no psychiatric evaluation, nothing. But he tried. I looked up at her. Who else signed this? She pointed to the bottom of the page. Todd Brennan, witness, Aunt Miriam Hayes, witness, my sister-in-law, Marcus's sister. The woman I'd invited to Thanksgiving every year for the past 20 years. They were going to take everything, I said. Yes, Rebecca said, but they failed. And now we have documentation of attempted fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy. If you want to press charges. No, I said. I don't want charges. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. I want something better, I said. That afternoon, back in my hotel room, I made the mistake of opening Instagram. I don't know why I did it. Maybe because I needed to see what Julian and Tiffany were telling the world. Maybe because I needed to confirm what I already knew, that they had no idea what was coming. Tiffany's profile loaded, 42,000 followers. Her bio, living my best life. Wife, influencer, bakery heiress, bakery heiress. I scrolled to her stories. The first one was from yesterday. A photo of the barbecue, string lights, cocktails, Julian's arm around her waist. The caption, celebrating new beginnings. The second one was a boomerang of her laughing, wine glass raised. The caption, sometimes you have to let go of dead weight to rise higher. Girl boss. New chapter. Dead weight. The third story was a text post, beige background, serif font. It's hard when the older generation refuses to accept that their time has passed. Growth requires letting go. Grateful for a partner who isn't afraid to make tough decisions. I stared at the screen. She'd posted it 6 hours ago. It had 847 views. I clicked on the comments. Live laugh latte. Oh, so true. My mill is the same way. Boomers really think the world revolves around them. And you who hustles. You're glowing, babe. Boundaries are everything. Trendy mom OF3. Toxic people come in all ages. Good for you for choosing you. I took a screenshot, then another. Then I scrolled back through her feed. 6 months of posts, luxury vacations, designer handbags, dinners at restaurants where entrees cost $60. All funded by the company Julian was embezzling from. I saved every single image. Then I closed the app and called Rebecca. I want to sell, I said. Sell what? She asked. Everything. The whole company. I want it gone. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Eleanor, Rebecca said carefully, are you sure? This is your legacy. 27 years. My legacy, I interrupted, is making sure Julian doesn't get a single piece of what he thinks he's entitled to. Another pause. Okay, Rebecca said. I know someone. 2 days later, I sat in a private conference room at Rebecca's office, across from a man named David Chen. David was 52, CEO of Cascade Baking Group, Hayes Artisan's biggest competitor in the Pacific Northwest. He'd built his company from a single food cart to 40 locations across 3 states. He wore a tailored navy suit and had the kind of handshake that said, I don't waste time. Mrs. Hayes, he said, sitting down. Rebecca tells me you're interested in selling. I am. May I ask why? I looked at him, at Rebecca, at the city outside the window. Because my son thinks he owns something he doesn't, I said, and I'd like to prove him wrong. David smiled, not a polite smile, a real one. I can respect that, he said. He opened a folder and slid a document across the table. We've been watching Hayes Artisan for years. You have brand recognition, prime locations, and a product people trust. We're prepared to offer $10, $3 million for full acquisition. I glanced at the number. What happens to current management? I asked. David leaned back in his chair. Standard acquisition protocol. We dissolve the existing board and management structure. We bring in our own team. Clean slate. Immediately? Immediately. I felt something shift in my chest. Not quite relief, not quite satisfaction. Clarity. And if I accept, I said, Julian loses everything. David didn't flinch. If Julian is current management, Yes, he'd be terminated, effective the day of closing. Rebecca was watching me carefully. I thought about the barbecue, the word parasite, the petition to declare me incompetent, Tiffany's Instagram stories, the forged signature on the loan documents. I thought about Marcus, about the first dollar we'd ever made, and I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who woke up at 4 a.m. and built something from nothing. She wouldn't have hesitated. "Where do I sign?" I said. David pulled out a pen. I woke up on Saturday morning and put on the suit I'd worn to Marcus's funeral. Charcoal gray, tailored. A single strand of pearls my mother had given me when I turned 40. The sapphire necklace from my grandmother. Heels that made me 3 inches taller and hurt after 20 minutes, but I didn't care. I looked at myself in the hotel bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked older than 62, but she also looked like someone who'd stopped apologizing. My phone buzzed on the counter. Julian. "Mom, this has gone on long enough. Can we talk? I think there's been a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding. I set the phone face down and finished my makeup. Rebecca picked me up at 9. David Chen and his legal team would meet us at the Hayes Artisan headquarters at 10. The paperwork was ready. The wire transfer was queued. All that was left was my signature and the look on Julian's face when he realized what was happening. "You ready?" Rebecca asked as we pulled into the parking lot. I looked at the building, the brick facade, the sign with our logo, the one I'd designed on a napkin 26 years ago, the flagship location where it all started. "Yes," I said. We walked in through the front entrance. The smell hit me immediately. Yeast and cinnamon and brown butter. The smell of every morning I'd ever worked. The smell of my entire adult life. Julian was in the office upstairs. I could hear his voice through the door, laughing about something. Probably on the phone with a vendor, pretending to be important. David Chen was already waiting in the conference room with 2 attorneys, a man and a woman, both in their 30s, both carrying briefcases that probably cost more than Julian's car payment. "Mrs. Hayes," David said, standing, "right on time." Rebecca set her briefcase on the table and pulled out the contracts, 2 copies, 43 pages each. "Once you sign," she said quietly, "there's no going back." "Good," I said. She handed me a pen. The door to the conference room opened. Julian walked in, Todd right behind him. They both stopped. Julian looked at me, at Rebecca, at David Chen, at the lawyers, at the paperwork spread across the table. "What's going on?" he asked. His voice had that edge to it, the one he used when he was trying to sound authoritative, but was actually scared. "We're having a meeting," I said calmly. "A meeting about what?" Julian's eyes darted to David. "Who are you?" David stood and extended his hand. "David Chen, CEO of Cascade Baking Group." Julian didn't shake it. "What is he doing here?" Julian looked at me. "Mom, what is this?" Todd had gone pale. He was staring at the contracts on the table like they were a bomb. "This," I said, "is a business transaction." I picked up the pen and signed the first page. My signature, the real one, with the sharp angle on the E, looked perfect. "Wait," Julian said. "Wait, stop. You can't—" "I can," I said. I flipped to the next page and signed again. "Mom," his voice cracked. "What are you doing?" I looked up at him, at my son, at the man who'd called me a parasite in front of half the neighborhood. "I'm selling Hayes Artisan Bakery to Cascade Baking Group," I said. "For $10. $3 million. The color drained from his face. "You can't do that," he whispered. "I can," I said. "I own 51% of the company. I have controlling interest. You would know that if you'd ever bothered to read the operating agreement." Todd grabbed the back of a chair. He looked like he might be sick. "But—" Julian's hands were shaking. "But this is mine. Dad left this to me." "No," I said. "He didn't. He left it to both of us, and I'm choosing to sell." I signed the next page, and the next. Julian turned to David. "You can't do this. This is hostile. This is a hostile takeover." David's expression didn't change. "It's a standard acquisition, Mr. Hayes. Your mother has every legal right to sell her shares. She doesn't understand what she's—" Julian looked around the room, desperate. "Todd, tell them she's not capable of making this decision." Todd said nothing. "Todd." "Julian," Todd said quietly, "she owns the company." Julian's face twisted. "This is because of the barbecue, isn't it? Because of what I said. I was trying to be funny. It was a joke." "A joke," I repeated. I set the pen down. "You called me a parasite," I said. "You told me to go to a nursing home. You tried to have me declared mentally incompetent so you could take everything I built. You forged my signature. You stole $347,000. And you think it was a joke?" His mouth opened, closed. "Mom," he said, "I can explain." "I don't want your explanation." I signed the final page. Rebecca countersigned as witness. David's attorneys did the same. And then David stood and extended his hand to me. "Congratulations, Mrs. Hayes," he said. I shook it. The deal was done. David nodded to someone outside the conference room door. 2 security guards walked in, Cascade employees, not ours, big men in dark suits with radios clipped to their belts. "Mr. Hayes," David said. "Mr. Brennan, as of this moment, your employment with Hayes Artisan Bakery is terminated. Please collect your personal belongings and exit the premises." Julian didn't move. "You're firing me?" he said. "You can't? Mom, tell them they can't do this." I stood and picked up my purse. "Goodbye, Julian," I said. "Mom, please." His voice broke, actual tears in his eyes now. "Please, this is all I have. This is everything." I thought about saying something cruel, something about how he should have thought of that before. But I didn't. I just walked past him. Todd followed the security guards out without a word. Julian stood frozen in the conference room, staring at the contracts like they might disappear if he looked long enough. I made it to the hallway before I saw her. Aunt Miriam. She was standing near the stairwell, her arms crossed, her face pinched with disapproval. She'd probably been listening the whole time. "Eleanor," she said, "this is cruel." I stopped. "Cruel," I repeated. "He's your son." "He tried to have me declared incompetent," I said. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper, the copy of the competency petition Rebecca had given me. I handed it to Miriam. "You signed this," I said. "You stood as a witness and tried to help him take everything from me." Miriam looked at the paper. Her face flushed. "I thought he said you weren't well, that you were confused. And you believed him." She didn't answer. "You chose your side, Miriam," I said. "Now live with it." I walked past her, down the stairs, and out into the parking lot. The air smelled like rain. The sky was gray and heavy, the kind of Portland morning that felt like the world was holding its breath. Rebecca was waiting by her car. "You okay?" she asked. I looked back at the building. Through the window, I could see Julian standing in the conference room, his hands in his hair, his mouth moving, probably yelling at someone. "Yes," I said, and I meant it. For 3 days, I stayed in my hotel room and watched Julian's life fall apart from a distance. It wasn't hard to track. People talk. Portland is a small city when you've been in business for 27 years. Everyone knows someone who knows someone. Rebecca called me Monday afternoon. "The house," she said. "Julian's in foreclosure." I was sitting by the window, drinking tea that had gone cold, watching the rain streak down the glass. "How?" I asked. "Remember that $200,000 loan he took out against the company? Turns out he used your house as collateral, forged the documents. The bank's been trying to reach you for weeks. He intercepted the calls." I set my teacup down carefully. "So he mortgaged my house," I said, "without my knowledge." "Yes. But because it was fraud, I've already filed to have it voided. The bank will come after Julian for the full amount. He has 30 days to pay, or they'll sue." "He doesn't have $200,000, I said. No, Rebecca said. He doesn't. I stared out at the city. Somewhere out there, in the house I'd paid off in full, Julian was probably pacing the floors, trying to figure out how to dig himself out of a hole he'd created. What else? I asked. Rebecca hesitated. His car was repossessed this morning. Audi Financial. He was 4 months behind on payments. 4 months, while he was buying drinks for his friends and hosting barbecues and calling me a parasite. And Tiffany? I asked. Radio silence. Her Instagram went dark yesterday. That night, I made the mistake of opening Facebook. I rarely used it, just had an account to see photos of old friends' grandchildren and recipes people shared. But when I logged in, I had a message request from someone I didn't know. Bethany Robertson. The name sounded familiar. I clicked on her profile. The Robertsons, my neighbors, the couple who'd stood in my backyard 3 days ago and watched Julian humiliate me. I opened the message. Mrs. Hayes. I don't know if you'll see this, but I wanted to reach out. My husband and I were at the barbecue on Sunday. We saw what Julian said to you, and I want you to know that it was appalling. I'm so sorry we didn't speak up in the moment. We were in shock. I'm not sure if this matters, but my husband recorded part of the party on his phone. He was trying to get footage of the sunset. He accidentally captured Julian's speech. If you ever need it for any reason, legal or otherwise, we'd be happy to share it. We've always admired you and what you built. You deserve better than what happened. Wishing you peace. Bethany. I read it 3 times. Then I replied, Thank you. I appreciate your kindness more than you know. I closed the app and sat in the dark hotel room listening to the sound of the rain. People had been watching, people had seen, and Julian had no idea. Tuesday morning, Tiffany's Instagram came back online. I shouldn't have checked, but I did. Her feed had changed. Gone were the photos of her and Julian, the captions about being a bakery heiress, the posts about our couple goals. Everything from the past 2 years had been deleted. In their place, a single new post, a photo of Tiffany on a beach, Bali based on the geotag. She was wearing a white linen dress, her hair blowing in the wind, her face tilted toward the sun. The caption, Sometimes the universe removes people from your life to protect your peace. Grateful for new beginnings and the courage to choose myself. Self-love. New chapter. Bali. 12,000 likes. 340 comments. Live, laugh latte. You go girl. You deserve the world. Wanderlust queen. This is your time, babe. She who hustles. Toxic masculinity has no place in your journey. Proud of you. No mention of Julian, no mention of the divorce, just erasure. I looked at the date stamp, posted 6 hours ago. I opened a new tab and searched Multnomah County divorce filings. It took 10 minutes to find it. Hayes vs. Hayes, petitioner, Tiffany Marie Hayes, grounds, irreconcilable differences. Filed Monday, 2 days after the sale. She'd left him the moment the money dried up. I closed the laptop and laughed. Not a happy laugh, a sharp, bitter one that surprised me. Julian had lost everything in 72 hours. My phone rang that afternoon. Aunt Miriam. I stared at the screen, watching it vibrate against the hotel desk. I almost didn't answer, but some old instinct, some muscle memory of politeness, of family obligation, made me pick up. Eleanor, Miriam said. Her voice was tight, strained. We need to talk. No, I said, we don't. Julian is falling apart. He called me this morning, crying. He has nowhere to go, no job, no money. Tiffany left him. He's your son, Eleanor. He called me a parasite, I said. He made a mistake. He tried to have me declared incompetent. You helped him. Silence on the other end. I thought, Miriam's voice wavered. I thought he was right. That you were holding on too tight. That it was time to let him lead. So you signed a legal document to strip me of my rights. Eleanor, please. He's lost everything. You have to fix this. I looked around the hotel room. At the suitcase I still hadn't fully unpacked. At the lawyer documents spread across the desk. At the brochure for the Greek Islands cruise I'd booked that morning. No, I said. I don't. You're his mother. And he's a grown man who made his choices. Now he gets to live with them. I hung up. She called back immediately. I turned off my phone. The next morning I went to the bank. I had a safety deposit box there. Had kept one since Marcus died. Inside were the original copies of our marriage certificate, the deed to the house, some old photographs, and a few pieces of jewelry I'd inherited. I added something new. A legal document Rebecca had drafted. A trust fund, $500,000, invested conservatively to be held for any future grandchildren. Not accessible to Julian. Not accessible to anyone except blood descendants under the age of 18. If Julian ever had children, they'd be taken care of. But he wouldn't see a penny. I locked the box and walked out into the sunlight. That afternoon, I finalized the cruise booking. 3 months. Greek islands, then the Amalfi Coast, then Croatia, first-class cabin, balcony view. I deserved it. I was packing when my phone, turned back on to confirm the cruise details, started ringing. Julian. I watched his name flash across the screen. It rang once, twice, 3 times. I could hear his voice in my head, already forming the words. Mom, please, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I have nowhere to go. Please. My finger hovered over the green button, and then the ringing stopped. A voicemail notification appeared. I sat on the edge of the bed and pressed play. Mom. His voice was wrecked, hoarse from crying. Mom, please pick up. I know I messed up. I know I said things I shouldn't have, but I don't know what to do. Tiffany's gone. The house is gone. I don't have anywhere to go. A sob, wet and desperate. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Please call me back. Please, I'm your son. I need you. The message ended. I sat there for a long time, the phone in my hand, staring at nothing. And then I stood up, finished packing, and called a car to take me to the port. The cruise ship was called the Odyssey. I didn't appreciate the irony until I was standing on the deck, watching Portland disappear behind me, the Columbia River widening into the Pacific. The ship was massive. 12 decks, 1,000 passengers, more restaurants than I could count. My cabin was on the 7th floor, with a balcony that overlooked the ocean, white linens, fresh flowers on the nightstand, a bottle of champagne with a note, "Welcome aboard, Mrs. Hayes." I opened the champagne and poured myself a glass. Then I walked out onto the balcony and watched the water. The air smelled like salt and diesel fuel and something else. Freedom, maybe. Or just distance. I thought about the last time I'd been on a boat. Marcus and I had taken a ferry to Vancouver Island for our 20th anniversary. He'd gotten seasick within an hour and spent the rest of the trip lying down in the cabin, groaning dramatically while I laughed at him. "You'd love this," I said to the ocean, to Marcus, to the memory of him. The wind carried my words away. A crew member, a young woman with a bright smile and a Croatian accent, appeared beside me with a tray of hors d'oeuvres. "Mrs. Hayes? Some smoked salmon?" "Thank you," I said, taking one. "Are you traveling alone?" she asked. It was a polite question, the kind people ask to make conversation. But something about the way she said it, genuinely curious, not pitying, made me pause. "Yes," I said, and then I smiled. "Yes, I am." She nodded, as if that was perfectly normal, and moved on to the next passenger. I stood there for a long time, drinking champagne and eating salmon and watching the sun sink toward the horizon. For the first time in 3 years, maybe longer, I felt like I could breathe. 3 weeks later, I was in Santorini. The island was everything the brochures promised: white buildings with blue domes, cliffs dropping into impossibly blue water, sunsets that looked like they'd been photoshopped. I spent my days wandering through narrow streets, drinking strong coffee at outdoor cafes, and pretending I was the kind of person who'd always lived like this. I wasn't thinking about Julian, or at least I was trying not to. But at night, alone in my cabin, I'd pull out my phone and stare at his contact name. I hadn't listened to the voicemail again, hadn't deleted it either. It just sat there, waiting. One night, anchored off the coast of Santorini, I poured myself a glass of wine and pressed play. Mom, please pick up. I know I messed up. I know I said things I shouldn't have, but I don't know what to do. Tiffany's gone. The house is gone. I don't have anywhere to go. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Please call me back. Please, I'm your son. I need you. His voice cracked on the last word. I set the phone down and looked out at the water. The Aegean Sea was calm tonight, black and endless, dotted with lights from other ships. I thought about Julian, about the little boy who used to help me knead dough in the bakery kitchen, his hands covered in flour, his face serious with concentration. About the teenager who'd worked the register every summer, charming customers with his smile. About the man he'd become, entitled, reckless, cruel. And I thought about Marcus, about what he would have wanted. He would have said to forgive him, to give him another chance, to remember that people make mistakes. But Marcus had never been called a parasite by his own son. I picked up my phone and opened the voice memo app. I pressed record. Julian, I said, you called me a parasite. You said I was useless. You told me to go to a nursing home and let you take what was rightfully yours. But here's the thing, sweetheart. Parasites need hosts. They can't survive on their own. So tell me, now that the host is gone, how are you surviving? I paused. The ship rocked gently beneath me. I've set up a trust fund, I continued, $500,000, for any future grandchildren you might have. It's in a legal document, locked in a safety deposit box. Your children will be taken care of. But you won't see a penny of it. Not unless you earn it. Another pause. When you've rebuilt something from nothing, the way I did, call me. When you've worked an 18-hour day because it's the only way to keep the lights on, call me. When you understand what it means to build instead of take, then we can talk. Not before. I stopped recording. I listened to it once. Then I sent it. And then I turned off my phone, walked out onto the balcony, and watched the lights of Santorini flicker in the distance. 2 months later, I was in a cafe in Athens. The cruise had ended a week ago, but I'd decided to stay. Rented a small apartment overlooking the Acropolis. Spent my mornings walking through ancient ruins and my afternoons sketching in cafes. I'd started drawing again. Nothing serious, just ideas, new bakery concepts, a small shop maybe, something local, something just for me, with no employees, no expansion plans, no son trying to take it over, just bread and coffee, and the smell of yeast rising in the morning. I was working on a sketch of a rustic storefront when the cafe owner brought me a package. "This came for you," she said in accented English. "Forwarded from America." I recognized Rebecca's handwriting on the label. Inside was a letter, handwritten, on plain white paper. Julian's handwriting. I'd know it anywhere. Mom. I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I need to say it anyway. You were right. About everything. I've been living in a studio apartment in Gresham, working at a Starbucks on 82nd Avenue. I'm the oldest barista there by about 10 years. People recognize me sometimes. From the bakery, from the news articles about the sale. It's humiliating. But I'm starting to understand why you did it. I took a business ethics course at Portland Community College. The professor asked us to write about a time we'd failed. I wrote about you, about what I said, about what I did. She gave me a C- and told me I hadn't gone deep enough, that I was still making excuses. So I rewrote it, and I realized I didn't just fail you as a son. I failed myself. I became someone Dad would have been ashamed of. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking for money or help or anything. I just wanted you to know I'm trying. I enrolled in a 2-year business program. I'm taking accounting, marketing, the basics you tried to teach me 100 times and I was too arrogant to listen to. I don't know if I'll ever build something like you did, but I'm going to try. I hope Greece is everything you wanted it to be. Love, Julian. I read it twice, then I folded it carefully and put it in my bag. I didn't respond, not yet, but I didn't throw it away either. That evening, I sat on the balcony of my Athens apartment and watched the sun set over the Acropolis. The sky turned gold, then pink, then deep purple. The ancient stones glowed in the last light, the same way they'd glowed for thousands of years. I thought about Julian, about the boy he'd been and the man he was trying to become. I thought about Marcus, about the empire we'd built together, the one I'd burned to the ground. I thought about Eleanor Hayes, 62 years old, alone in a foreign country, drinking wine and sketching bakery designs she might never build. And I realized I was happy. Not the way I'd been happy with Marcus, not the way I'd been happy when the business was growing, when Julian was young and still looked at me like I'd hung the moon. This was different, quieter, mine. My phone was still off, had been for weeks, but tomorrow maybe I'd turn it on. Maybe I'd write back to Julian. Maybe I'd tell him that the road to forgiveness was long, but it existed, that he'd have to walk every step of it himself, but I'd left the door cracked, or maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I'd just sit here, in this city older than empires, and let the past be the past. The sun dropped below the horizon, and the lights of Athens began to flicker on, one by one, like stars coming out. Somewhere across the ocean, my son was learning to make coffee for strangers. Somewhere in Portland, a bakery I'd built was being run by someone else. And here, on a balcony in Greece, I was finally truly free. I raised my glass to the sky. To new beginnings, I said. The wind carried my words away, out over the ancient city, into the night, and I smiled.